John Turnbull's famous Declaration of Independence painting that hangs in the rotunda at the Capitol in Washington is one of the most famous American paintings of all time. All 47 delegates sit formally dressed, watching the Declaration Committee present the most famous American document. It's a majestic scene, and one that brings a great feeling of pride to most who see it. We look fondly back upon those moments and believe it to be the moment of our heritage, captured like a photograph, for all time and memorial. There is not a doubt in my mind that the mysterious confluence of great minds, agitation, and isolation that led incredible people together to codify in some great measure the rights of all mankind is a miracle of providence. There is no diminution of the accomplishments or the reality that those men, their convictions towards liberty, and their willingness to declare and sustain by war their rights is the founding core of what I believe still makes America the most compelling historical story of all time. But the painting is all wrong. No such gathering ever existed to be painted in the grandeur that is portrayed. At the time, nearly 30,000 British regulars were moving upon New York, and there were ships at the mouth of the Delaware Bay intent on squashing the rebellion in Philadelphia. The men in the portrait were far too at risk to place themselves in such harm's way. More likely than not, the men were scurrying in and out of the room, adhering their signatures as time allowed, and before they departed back to their homelands to protect their property. Most were fugitives in status and understood in full detail that what they were signing was to be their own damning evidence should the war not go in the favor of the colonists. But the winners write history, and so the painting, for all its errors, graces the Capitol shrine as both pseudo-propaganda and affirmation upon the worshippers that America stood boldly against the crown and government. It adds mystique and validation to a good story, but it is not the history we think it is. Our current era relies heavily upon our past, as faulty as the history might be, to venerate the current system of government we have. The temples to the fallen, the Greek revival architecture, the language of a citadel, are all reinforcing mechanisms that assure the masses that the new version of king and queen have it all under control, and that there is nothing to question except the motives of our fellow citizens. Government, at its core, is a strange phenomenon. It is supposedly an institution for the protection of its citizen by its own citizens. People are elected and run for office, and we vote for the offices that need filling. It all actually is a nice system, until the power that is inherently in each human is awakened by self-aggrandizement and a lavish lifestyle. Our current iteration of government in Washington is one that abrades upon the people despite their desires. You can bear witness to any of the current legislation, and it's apparent that the needs of the American are nearly last in every instance. It has become more divisive, ineffective, abusive to the people, and is all deeply intentionally designed. True history might actually hold some clues to what lies ahead for us, as the Declaration actually declares that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. The interesting aspects of our moment and theirs that find its correlations is that the colonists were very opposed to independence, even after the British regular army had marched upon Concord and 400 men were slaughtered at the hands of the army at Bunker Hill. The Continental Congress first requested an olive branch petition to be sent to the king to try to reconcile the damage that had been done to their very way of life and their government. Revolution was only advocated for by the New England states in 1775. Their petition was sent, and only after the king replied did they have the fortitude to place signature to paper, claiming their independence. In finding the original reply from the king, there are many things in it that bear uncanny resemblance to our current behemoth. Ours has no name, but its craving of power and arrogance towards its own belief in its divine appointment are eerily the same as King George III. As you hear these words, you may understand fully the rebellion that the Continental Congress had need to embrace. There is something strangely striking about what power looks like regardless of the century.
Whereas many of our subjects in diverse parts of our colonies and plantations in North America, misled by dangerous and ill-designing men, and forgetting the allegiance which they owe to the power that has protected and sustained them, after various disorderly acts committed in disturbance of the public peace, to the obstruction of lawful commerce, and to the oppression of our loyal subjects carrying on the same, have at length proceeded to an open and avowed rebellion, by arraying themselves in hostile manner to withstand the execution of the law, and traitorously preparing, ordering, and levying war against us. And whereas there is reason to apprehend that such rebellion hath been much promoted and encouraged by the traitorous correspondence, counsels, and comfort of divers wicked and desperate persons within this realm, to the end therefore that none of our subjects may neglect or violate their duty through ignorance thereof, or through any doubt of the protection which the law will afford to their loyalty and zeal, we have thought fit, by and with the advice of our Privy Council, to issue this our royal proclamation, hereby declaring that not only all our officers, civil and military, are obliged to exert their utmost endeavors to suppress such rebellion, and to bring the traitors to justice, but that all our subjects of this realm and the dominions thereunto belonging are bound by law to be aiding and assisting in the suppression of such rebellion, and to disclose and make known all traitorous conspiracies and attempts against us, our crown and dignity. And we do accordingly strictly charge and command all our officers, as well civil as military, and all other our obedient and loyal subjects, to use their utmost endeavors to withstand and suppress such rebellion, and to disclose and make known all treasons and traitorous conspiracies which they shall know to be against us, our crown and dignity. And for that purpose, that they transmit to one of our principal secretaries of state, or other proper officer, due and full information of all persons who shall be found carrying on correspondence with, or in any manner or degree aiding or abetting, the persons now in open arms and rebellion against our government within any of our colonies and plantations in North America, in order to bring to condign punishment the authors, perpetrators, and abettors of such traitorous designs. God save the King.
The hardest part of our moment is not that the inner cry of natural law is dormant. I believe that flame is inextinguishable. The difficulty is, much like the colonists' own struggle, our government has a God complex. It sees itself as an entity unto itself. Its own preservation is the only dominant driver of its choices. Just like the king of old, it sees itself as the guardian of our safety, the protector from conspiracy, and justified by law. I do believe that the founding of this country has at its core an understanding of how oppressive this attitude was at the time of the Revolution, and how important it was to guard against it. Arguments can be made that we as citizens are the only ones participating in the rules, but I also think that because of the brilliance and awareness of these men and what governments are capable of, our system may yet provide a solution that does not include a violent end. It becomes incumbent upon us to throw off the despotism of bad government, not with guns or war, but with our voices and our decisions. We have the chance to peacefully protest and change direction of abusive governments, but we must stop seeing them as powerfully as they wish us to see them. We have to find leaders who will use their voices to help us know that we are not alone. It is not the job of a leader to drag us to our destiny. Instead, it should be one that vocally unites us towards each other. Instead of conflict with one another, we should be looking towards the actual entities that are causing harm and cease their grasp of power. We assign it to them by our willful, complicit behaviors. I still believe our system has some good in it. It just needs to allow us to use its built-in tools for its restraint. We must hold to Jefferson's words of wisdom and admonishment for the future generations they foresaw as free people. All experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.